Higher education has been one of the more severely impacted sectors by the COVID-19 epidemic. 2020 was a transformational year for colleges and universities around the country to push the reset button, reassess their operations, and to assert students about the value of the education that they provide. Thankfully, some universities have been preparing over the years to lay out a strong foundation of student success. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with the top leader in the country, Dr. Timothy Renick. He is the executive director of the newly established National Institute of Student Success. It is the first of its kind in the country. Tim, what a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today and to inform our viewers about the program.
Good to be here, Carlo. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. So, Tim, when I Google National Institute for Student Success, the top result is about the announcement of Georgia State introducing it into the world last October in 2020. Since it's so new to many of our viewers, why don't you tell us what the National Institute of Student Success is?
Sure. There are lots of different approaches to student success, right? There are some organizations that are dedicated to helping students K through 12 become prepared for college. Michelle Obama has a program for better matching students to the right college. That's not the focus of the National Institute for Student Success. The NIS is dedicated to helping campuses understand their own complicity in college dropout rates. What we found at Georgia State over the last decade is that in many cases, the reasons that students are dropping out of college is not necessarily that they weren't prepared enough or well enough by their K through 12 programs, but that we have created administrative obstacles to their progression and ultimately graduation. Things like problems with the way we admit students, we register them, we advise students, we administer financial aid. And the National Institute for Student Success is kind of laser focused on helping campuses look at their own administrative processes and improve them in such a way that they can make transformative differences, not graduate a few more students. Georgia State is now graduating 3,500 more students every year than we were 10 years ago through this approach of improving our administrative structures.
You're often recognized as one of the most innovative leaders in higher education. So how has the work that you've done at Georgia State laid out the groundwork for the NISS?
We've learned a lot over the last decade through our work at Georgia State. When we started, I began leading Georgia State student success programs back in 2008. This was a very new field nationally. In fact, even the nomenclature student success was relatively unfamiliar. There were very few campuses that had student success leaders, vice presidents, and associate provosts and so forth. And so what we've discovered has been surprising, not only to my colleagues nationally, but to me personally. When we set out to try to improve graduation rates at Georgia State, we concentrated in certain data-based approaches, in part because our resources were so slim. We didn't have enough money to do everything we wanted to do. So we used data to identify where we were tripping up students. The logic being, that's a really efficient way of making a difference because these are things we can control. If we're the problem, then we can presumably resolve it. But what we found, much to our surprise, is when we began to scale these programs, when we began to, for instance, track every single student every night for 800 different predictive analytics-based risk factors and intervene not by the hundreds or even the thousands, but every year now we have over 100,000 times when we're proactively reaching out to students because we've noticed something in the data that is amiss, some way in which they've gone off path or are at risk. That what we found is not only did it improve graduation rates, it disproportionately helped the students who were struggling the most. So Perimeter College is a great example. We were consolidated by the state of Georgia with Perimeter College less than 5 years ago. And over the time period since, we've incrementally implemented some of our signature programs, predictive analytics, chatbot, micro grants, and so forth. What we found is that all the students benefit. The Perimeter graduation rates in less than 5 years have more than tripled in less than 5 years. But what we also found is the gains were disproportionately beneficial to students from underserved backgrounds. So when consolidation was announced by the state of Georgia, white students were graduating from Perimeter at 2.5 times the rate of Black students. This fall, white students and Black students are graduating at exactly the same rate. So by taking control and supporting students better through these administrative processes, advisement, financial aid, communication systems, registration systems, and so forth, we can make a transformative difference. But what we've also learned is we can begin to not only lessen, but even eliminate equity gaps.
So what was your fork in the road moment in your journey that led you to innovate student success at the national level at Georgia State?
Well, in some ways, our national role in this whole discussion was purely by accident and never something we designed. And by extension, in some ways, this NIST, this National Institute, flows from that same kind of serendipitous process. We began to get attention for doing something that's important, which is not improving graduation rates by changing the students we admit, but improving graduation rate by changing ourselves, right? Changing our processes and serving the students we were already admitting better. That's a very exciting proposition given current college demographics. Because as you well know, the reality is there are not more and more students graduating from high school and in the pipeline ready to go to college. Even in states like Georgia, that maybe 10, 15 years ago had rapidly improving and increasing college going rates, that those numbers have turned flat. And in certain parts of the country, there are steep declines in the number of college eligible students. So there was a message there that resonated when people began to hear that Georgia State was succeeding with the students they had rather than the students, some faculty might like us to enroll. A secondary part of that was when people began to hear that we were first closing and then eliminating equity gaps, that was very appealing as well. My academic background is actually not in data and analytics. I'm a religious studies professor, and my main field of emphasis is religious ethics. And so what got me into this field initially is the fact that, we need to do better. We have a moral obligation to do better. And there are lots of people out there in higher ed like that who have a calling to higher education because they believe in the mission it serves. And so that resonated as well. And so initially, it was a trickle. We had campuses calling us up and said, well, we've been trying to implement predictive analytics on our campus, or change our advising system, or introduce a chatbot, or change our financial aid policies. And we heard you've been really successful. Would you mind if we drop by for a day or send a team for a day? As I say, initially it was a trickle. Then 2 or 3 years ago, it got to the point where we were hosting campuses almost every other day, 2-3 times a week. We had campuses visiting us for an entire day. So then we hired somebody to be a full-time coordinator of the campus visits of the program where other campuses send teams to spend time with us. And we decided we'd designate 2 days a month in which the campuses could come and visit us. And by the end of last year, this is pre-COVID, we were having some days 80 and 90 people coming on a single day to try to learn about the programs that we had. So I don't know there was a single moment in which this happened. It was kind of a groundswell, but the NIST is in part a response to that kind of demand. We love to share what we're doing, and we're true believers in the importance of trying to impact these numbers, not just at Georgia State, but nationally. I mean, our times cry out for why higher education is so important and why equity gaps are so damaging and harmful to our society and to our communities. But we weren't able to do that in a very efficient fashion, right? We were doing it off the backs of people who already had full-time jobs. So the NIST is a gesture towards moving towards serving the campuses who are interested in learning about what we're doing in a much more concentrated fashion, building up consulting teams, training practitioners who will be able to devote a large part of their time to helping other campuses implement what they're doing, not having them visit for a single day. But one of the models that we will offer is campuses being able to work with us for an entire year. And over the course of that year, every other week having a touch point, visiting Georgia State, us sending somebody to visit their campus, having webinars or exchanges, connecting practitioner to practitioner. What we found is It's not enough for me to talk about what we've done in general sense. What people want to hear after that is, okay, I need to connect my director of financial aid to your director of financial aid to figure out how you actually implement a micro grant program, and how do you get around this particular obstacle in the technical platforms, and how you do represent this in your audit reports and so forth. All the kind of detail minutia that is well off my radar screen is exactly what the National Institute will be able to afford people, the chance to connect and learn those drill down details for implementation.